Why are you sitting? A wife should always stand. At 7 months pregnant, I felt a sudden pain in my belly and sat down, only to have my husband, Derek, kick it. Hey, Derek. What the hell are you thinking? Shut up. Besides, the baby in her belly is just a girl anyway. Mike, with a changed tone, spoke up to Derek. But Derek retorted without giving any regard to me, acting all high and mighty. I just stared at the retreating Derek. Without noticing my gaze, Derek, smirking, went back to his seat. But my attention shifted to a figure standing in front of Derek. What? And that person took an action against Derek. My name is Catherine, a 30-year-old housewife. I moved to New York for college from a remote part of Nebraska and started working. 2 years ago, I got married, and now I'm expecting our first child. I met my husband Derek at work. He's the son of the CEO of our business partner. Derek, although the second son, is currently working as an executive. He graduated from a renowned international university, a typical elite. However, there are rumors that his elder brother, Mike, might become the CEO. Derek isn't the direct heir, but he seems to plan on working in the company for the long run. At first, I wondered why someone like him would be interested in someone like me. Even so, Derek's relentless invitations to go out didn't stop, and eventually, I gave in and we started dating. Derek was very kind, and his company is well established. I was increasingly attracted to Derek, and I decided to marry him. Upon marriage, I quit my job. It was because of the words of my mother-in-law, Michelle. A woman should naturally settle down once she's married. At least until the child is 3, the mother should take care of them. When I announced my pregnancy, Michelle was the first to say that to me. Apparently, she didn't like the fact that Mike's wife, Emily, neither quit her job during pregnancy nor after childbirth. It's sad to think about daycare. Letting a child stay at daycare and working might give off a vibe that our company's unstable, don't you think? Every time we visited, Michelle would mumble complaints and gossip about Emily. Hearing that, even Derek didn't try to stop Michelle and would add, Mike just gives Emily too much freedom. I wasn't familiar with the dynamics of a business family. There might be something between the eldest son's wife and the mother-in-law that I don't understand. That's why I couldn't say anything during their conversations. However, taking my silence as consent, both Derek and Michelle assumed I shared their opinion, and their gossip about Emily only got worse. After all, even if Emily doesn't work, it won't hurt the company. I wonder if she's saving money in case she wants to divorce Mike one day. You know, it's never a good thing when a woman has money. There were times when I thought they went too far, but I was too timid to retort. I had heard that Emily wanted to continue working because she believed the company needed her. But Michelle didn't seem to like that comment. Catherine quit right away, so I don't have to worry about that. Unlike Emily, I wasn't against quitting my job. So when I was advised to resign, I didn't resist much. However, I certainly felt uneasy around Michelle and Derek, despite never sharing my feelings with them. After getting married, I became a stay-at-home wife. Yet, Derek started making condescending comments about me. You're not working, so at least do the housework properly. He would grumble every time he came home. Of course, I did what I could, like cleaning, laundry, and preparing meals. But being new to the role of a housewife, I didn't know what more I could do, and I grew uneasy whenever Derek was around. He started complaining to my mother-in-law that, despite being a stay-at-home wife, I couldn't manage the household chores properly. My mother-in-law took his side and started scolding me too. Catherine, you really need to support Derek properly. Our daughter-in-laws just seem to be so unhelpful. Michelle started scolding me too, and every time I visited my in-laws, I felt more and more belittled. Still, she's better than Mike's wife. Those two never even come around here. Well, that's true. But being told that, I felt I couldn't distance myself from my in-laws. If I tried, who knows what they'd say about me, especially with Derek's smug remarks. Over time, I started thinking that at least I was better off than Emily. No matter how hard Derek was on me or how much Michelle scolded me, thinking I was better than Emily somehow helped me cope. After some time, I found out I was pregnant. Both my in-laws and Derek were thrilled. One day, I went shopping alone for dinner. But on the way, I felt sick and had to sit down on the side of the road. Are you okay? Someone approached me. Oh, Catherine? What's wrong? It turned out to be Emily. She had finished her part-time job early and was on her way to pick up her daughter from daycare. While others just walked by without saying a word, Emily stopped her car to check on me. Having heard so many stories about Emily from Derek, I was hesitant to trust her. I told her I was fine, but Emily insisted on giving me a ride home. I hadn't finished shopping, but I was in no condition to continue. I reluctantly got in her car, and she bought me a tea and dropped me off at home. It felt like the first time in ages someone had been kind to me. I couldn't help but tear up. Perhaps because of the morning sickness. Emily listened and comforted me throughout. Later, she remembered I had mentioned struggling to find foods I could tolerate and brought me some jellies and ice creams. I could eat these when I had morning sickness, but I'm not sure if you can. I was really grateful for her gesture. But that night, when Derek opened the fridge and saw all the jellies and ice creams, he frowned. "What's with all this? Wasting money when you're not even working?" I retorted. "It's not like that. Emily brought them for me. She said she felt bad for me because of the morning sickness." "Emily? My sister-in-law?" I nodded. While I was on the street, I suddenly felt ill and couldn't move. By coincidence, it was Emily who came to my aid. She kindly gave me a ride, and even brought me some comfort food later on. When I relayed this to Derek, his expression darkened. I had expected my husband to respond with something like, "Oh, you caused some trouble," or, "I'm grateful for their help," but his reaction was far from what I had imagined. "Are you serious? Please don't owe anything to that couple," he said, holding his head in his hands as soon as I finished my story. "Why not? They helped me out. There's no need to say it like that," I retorted, but Derek shot me a sharp glare. He took out a trash bag and said, "Just get rid of these," and began to throw away the food from Emily. I was stunned, unable to comprehend his overreaction. "Never ever depend on or accept money from someone who disregards my mother's opinions and works recklessly," Derek exclaimed. It seemed Derek considered Michelle's words as law. I was at a loss for words. After that, Emily tried to reach out to me multiple times, concerned about my health, but I always brushed her off, fearing Derek's reaction. There were days when I felt horrible and wanted to ask someone for help. No matter how severe my morning sickness was, if I slacked off on house chores, Derek would complain. But I could never bring myself to ask Emily for help. Somehow, I managed to get through my morning sickness, and I've reached my 7th month of pregnancy. At my last checkup, everything seemed to be going well with the baby's growth, and we found out its gender, so we've slowly started preparing for the birth. Looks like it's gonna be a girl. I immediately shared the news with Derek, but he didn't seem particularly interested. I guess men often find it harder to grasp the reality of becoming parents, and Derek is probably no exception. I didn't say anything more on the matter. And then, the new year arrived. Every New Year's Day, relatives gather at Michelle's house. Even Mike's family, who usually doesn't visit, would come as a complete family unit for the New Year's celebration. "We're back. Happy New Year!" Derek and I visited Michelle's place together on January 2nd. "Happy New Year! Catherine, how are you feeling?" It seems that Mike's family had arrived before us, and Emily immediately spoke to me. "I'm doing fine, don't worry about it." Although the words were directed at me, Derek responded to Emily with a forced smile and went inside without properly greeting her. "I've been waiting for you, Catherine. It's been lonely without someone to chat with." Michelle greeted me as she always did. Even though Emily was there. I greeted Michelle with a wry smile. But then, an incident happened that evening. To prepare for dinner, Michelle, Emily, and I were all in the kitchen. In the living room of Michelle's house, there were about 15 family members gathered, including uncles of Michelle's husband. Derek, who was already enjoying a drink, was the loudest amongst the relatives. "Work is going well, Catherine always listens to me and Mom, so life's been good." It wasn't really a compliment to me. It was clear to everyone that he was making a dig at Mike and Emily. "Catherine, can you pass the beer?" "Sure." Michelle seemed to prefer asking me over Emily for help. I was constantly on my feet, despite being heavily pregnant. But moving around so much caused my belly to tighten. Emily was the first to notice. "Catherine, you've been rubbing your belly for a while now. Are you in pain?" "Oh really? You should have said something. Take a break." Although Michelle's tone was a bit sharp, she told me to rest. I took a seat in the room next to the living room, rubbing my belly and watching everyone. In front of me, Mike was feeding their son, Sean. "Catherine, are you okay? Don't be afraid to tell Michelle if you can't help out. It's important to take care of yourself." "Thank you." Mike spoke kindly to me. We chatted for a bit. He shared stories of when Sean was born, what he likes now, and I found it quite informative. It was also evident that Mike was very involved in child-rearing. "Do you know the gender of your baby yet?" "Yes, it seems to be a girl." "That's gonna be so adorable." However, Derek didn't seem pleased hearing our conversation. He got up with a displeased expression. I thought he was going to the restroom, but he came straight over to me. "What are you sitting around for?" "Huh?" Caught off guard by the sudden question, I couldn't respond properly. When I asked Derek again, to my surprise, he kicked me in the stomach. It wasn't with a lot of force, but it made me yelp, and I curled up in my chair, clutching my belly. The shock of being treated that way was greater than the pain, and I couldn't move. Such an overreaction. A wife should always be on her feet. You let my mom work and you're just sitting here chit-chatting. What are you thinking? Derek exclaimed. Hey Derek. What the hell do you think you're doing? Mike responded. What's your problem? Shut up. Besides, the baby she's carrying is just gonna be a girl anyway. She'll eventually get married off and won't be of any use to the company, so who cares? Mike raised his voice, confronting Derek. But Derek brushed him off, not caring how it affected me, acting all high and mighty. Hey! You're crossing a line. I couldn't see who it was, but I heard one of our relatives reprimanding Derek. I've decided I'm not gonna be a spineless husband like some people, always pampering their wives. If my wife's acting out, I gotta correct her. Derek said, laughing and distancing himself from me. Mike doesn't even have control over Emily. Letting her do whatever she wants. You think someone like that can manage employees in the future? Dad, maybe you should think about it too. I think I'd make a better CEO. I'm sure even Mom thinks so. Finally, I got a sense of what Derek was thinking. Derek's act of always siding with Michelle and being at her beck and call was probably to have her on his side. Including bad-mouthing Mike and Emily. He was envious that Mike, being the eldest, might take over the company. He probably hoped to use Michelle's influence on his father to secure his position. For that reason, he must have been forcing me to act in a way that would make me likable to Michelle. I looked up and glared at Derek. He didn't even notice my stare, smirking as he sat in his chair. However, my gaze shifted to Joe, my father-in-law, who had risen in front of Derek. Once Joe confirmed that Derek had taken a seat, he stood up in turn and approached Derek without saying a word. What? Then, out of the blue, Joe gave Derek a hard kick. Everyone was stunned. Even Derek was staggered, his eyes darting around in shock. You don't have a child in your belly, so you should be fine standing for a bit. Besides, if the child is wrong, it's up to me as the father to correct it. Joe said, trying to grab Derek by the collar. Dad, calm down. The one who stopped it was Mike, who had been ridiculed all along. Mike, aren't you pissed being talked down to like that? Joe retorted. But Mike just laughed. Not really, I actually feel sorry for him. Huh? After all, he's so obsessed with the title of CEO that he can't even value his own family. If he wants the position that badly, let him have it. Derek's face turned beet red at those words. The company and title he so desperately wanted. Mike was so nonchalantly offering it up. He must have felt like he lost to Mike, and being pitted made him even more embarrassed. Besides, I believe family is about cooperation and respect. I don't plan to control them. The same goes for our employees. I've always wanted to build a company where employees cooperate and respect each other. I'm not good at controlling people, so if Derek is, maybe he should do it. After all, family is more important to me. By this point, it was clear who was truly fit to be CEO. Mike had twice suggested that Derek take over, but Derek couldn't find any words to respond and just sat there, his face still red. But all I did was. Derek was just opening and closing his mouth in shock. Okay, that's enough. Emily intervened, breaking the tense atmosphere. Thank you, Joe, for defending Mike, she said. Joe looked slightly embarrassed. while Derek just looked down, frustrated. Derek, did you think Mike can't control me just because, as Michelle says, we sent our son, Sean, to daycare before he turned 3? Well, yeah. It's a CEO's household, and we gotta think about how we look from the outside. If Mike really cared about that, he wouldn't let you work, right? Derek said, his voice confident only when he felt he could counter. Seeing that, I couldn't help but be exasperated. True, but Mike has thought about it. He did ask me to quit. But I wanted to work, so if you're gonna blame someone, blame me. Comparing the two, Mike and Emily's relationship seemed wonderful. They respected each other's wishes and cared deeply for each other. Thinking about how I'd been worried about Michelle's opinions in the past seemed silly in retrospect. Until the child is 3 years old? What's that all about? Did my wife ever mention this? Joe seemed unaware of Michelle's statement. He let out an exasperated sigh. Emily and Catherine, I'm so sorry for any trouble caused by my wife's remarks. Oh, don't apologize. And hearing what Derek said earlier, I can't help but think that my son's foolishness has made you feel uncomfortable, Catherine. I truly apologize. Seeing Joe sincerely apologize to us without any concern for what others might think was touching. If anything, we felt guilty for having him apologize, given how he defended us. In the meantime, Michelle, who had been in the room, seemed flustered by Joe's demeanor. She muttered, looking embarrassed and trying to justify her actions. While I believe she didn't mean any harm with her comment about waiting until the child was 3 years old, he did hurt Emily with her complaints and pushed me to my limits. Don't make excuses. Don't you feel ashamed for meddling in child rearing? Joe reprimanded Michelle. At his words, realization seemed to dawn on Michelle about the folly and irresponsibility of her remarks. Emily, I really owe a lot to your family's business. I'm more than happy for you to continue working with us. I understand the company wouldn't run without you. I hope we can continue our professional and personal relationship. But honestly, I had no clue what he was talking about. Huh? Derek, Michelle, and indeed the entire family were perplexed by Joe's words. Come on, Dad, I told you not to mention anything about Emily's family business. Mike chuckled, and following suit, Emily also laughed awkwardly. What's going on? I asked Emily. Everyone must have been thinking the same thing. Emily finally spoke up. My dad is the CEO of a company called Lifetime Corp. The company has nothing to do with my marriage to Mike, so he only told his dad about it. Hearing that, the entire family gasped in surprise. Lifetime Corp was a huge company in the area, and everyone knew of it. Certainly larger than Joe's business, and it even had dealings with them. Nobody had ever seen Emily's reclusive and busy father. Even Michelle and Derek had met him as Emily's father, but they had no idea he was such a prominent CEO. Emily herself was a high-ranking executive in the company. Both Derek and Michelle turned pale as they realized the truth. The two of them, who had belittled Emily's work up to this point, probably never imagined they were mocking the heiress of a company that benefited their own business. They seemed at a loss. Emily, I doubt you can care for your employees. Derek turned pale as a ghost as he pleaded for forgiveness. Dad, you're right. I was wrong. Please give me another chance. As desperate as Derek seemed, Joe's temper flared again. You're apologizing to the wrong person. Startled by Joe's words, Derek staggered up and approached me. Instinctively, I shielded my belly, fearing another altercation. Seeing that, Derek, looking hurt, shed tears and fell to his knees. I'm so sorry. I must have hurt the baby too. Tears streamed down Derek's face. He seemed genuinely remorseful. In the background, Michelle whispered, Emily, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said those things to you. Upon hearing that, Emily smiled sweetly. Then, she promptly brushed it off. Please apologize to Catherine instead. She's been under a lot of pressure listening to your complaints about me all the time. And their unborn baby probably heard all the things you said too. Michelle was taken aback by those words and apologized to me as well. Catherine, I'm so sorry. Their remorse was palpable, and both Emily and I shared a knowing smile. However, Joe was far from pacified. "Both of you, get out. I don't want to see your faces today," as he ordered Michelle and Derek out of the room. Everyone silently watched them leave. After the somber departure, a family member finally spoke up. "Come on, Catherine and Emily, let's all eat together. Sounds good, shall we?" "Yes." And Emily and I enjoyed a meal surrounded by everyone. It was my first fun night at Joe's family home. However, Joe's anger didn't subside for a while, and Derek was eventually told not to come home. His dream of becoming a CEO vanished. He still works at the company, but there's no sign of promotion. He remains just an ordinary employee. Perhaps that's why Derek doesn't talk about work as much as he used to. After he had hit me in the stomach, something I couldn't forgive, when I brought up divorce, he apologized and promised he'd never drink again in his life. I suggested we live apart for a while. Without a home to return to, Derek seemed to have been staying at the office. He would grab something from a fast food place and would shower at a motel. That lifestyle seemed tough on him. Derek lost about 10 pounds in a month. But, worn out as he was, he kept working daily and would call me every day. "Do you need anything? How are you feeling?" Little by little, I started to open up to Derek again. Feeling sorry for him, I told Derek he could come back home. When he returned, he apologized to me once more. After that, he seemed like a changed man. Instead of nagging about household chores, he'd eagerly do them. "Catherine, you rest." Nowadays, he'd even clean the difficult-to-maintain bathroom on behalf of me, who's heavily pregnant. Seeing this, even Joe gave permission to visit the family home whenever he's free. Michelle has mellowed down considerably, and naturally, she doesn't badmouth Emily anymore. "I think I want to work hard for my family more than for the company now." Derek has started saying things like that. The fact that he had hit me in the stomach is something I can never fully forgive in my lifetime. However, people can change. With the Derek I know now, I believe we can happily welcome our baby.